We live in interesting times on tonight's headlines. The number of dead in a wildfire raging in California has risen, matching the deadliest in the state's history, as recovery teams found 6 more bodies in the grim search through the wreckage. Singapore's Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong said businesses should be prepared to accept more competition in their home markets as they benefit from ASEAN integration, open and connected economies. Saudi Arabia's energy minister says oil producers should cut output by 1 million barrels per day to rebalance the market. I'm Alma Angeles, wherever you're watching from around the world. Thank you very much for joining us. And now to the news. The number of dead in a wildfire raging in California has reached more than 30, matching the deadliest in the state's history as recovery teams found 6 more bodies in the grim search through the wreckage. The Camp Fire in the foothills of the Sierra Nevada mountains north of Sacramento is the largest and most destructive of several infernos that have sent 250,000 people fleeing their homes across the tinder-dry state, razing 6,400 homes in the town of Paradise and effectively wiping it off the map. At least 31 people have died in fire zones in North and South California, where acrid smoke blanketed the sky for miles, the sun barely visible. Now, on the ground, cars caught in the flames were reduced to scorched metal skeletons, while homes were left as smoldering piles of debris, with an occasional brick wall or chimney remaining. Meanwhile, scores of people remain unaccounted for, and several fire-affected areas have been left without cell phone service. The Camp Fire, meanwhile, has the grisly distinction of matching the 1933 Griffith Park disaster in Los Angeles, until now the single deadliest wildfire on record, according to the California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection, or CAL FIRE. In Southern California, meanwhile, the Woolsey Fire engulfed parts of thousands of oaks, where the community is still shell-shocked after a Marine Corps veteran shot dead 12 people in a country music bar on Wednesday. It has consumed around 85,500 acres, destroyed at least 177 buildings, and was 15% contained, according to CAL FIRE, late Sunday U.S. time. Singer Miley Cyrus's home was one of the destroyed Southern California buildings.
Sadly and tragically, I'm reporting today that we have 2 fatalities that occurred in the fire area. That is currently under investigation. We have our homicide investigators on scene, and we'll treat that as a fatality at this point, and we'll have more to talk about that later on as the investigation unfolds.
Last night was a tough night. As the fire jumped the 101 and ran into Malibu, it was quite a fight. But what I can say is, again, your first responders, your law enforcement officers, your firefighters made heroic efforts in saving lives and protecting property. We know Mother Nature has given us a little reprieve today. The winds have stopped. It gives us some opportunities. But I need everybody to remain vigilant. Please pay attention to the media. Pay attention to requests for evacuations.
This is the 6th year of 7 years of drought here in this region. So our firefighters have been facing some extreme, tough fire conditions that they said that they've never seen in their life.
Meanwhile, wildfires continue to burn in Northern California, and residents are already in despair. Here's Winverly Rivera for the report.
An outbreak of wildfires occurred in Ventura County, with 7,500 acres burned, 1,000 homes destroyed, and 30,000 people forced to evacuate from their homes.
The fires have been are bad enough that I can't go home. I spent the night at Denny's restaurant and I reserved a cot here for tonight if need be, but I'm hopeful that they'll let us return to our homes in Newbury Park.
It's a horrible loss of people's houses, materialistic, and just the emotional distress is immense. And the whole tragedy that happened yesterday in Thousand Oaks is one thing after the next. So we just really got to stick together and try to help out as much as we can with anything that we can.
Fueling the wildfires are Santa Ana winds going as fast as 25 to 35 miles per hour and peak up to 70 miles per hour. A red fire warning has been raised in Ventura County.
Where I live actually is evacuated, and so a lot of people are kind of trying to figure out where to go. There's just a lot going on and a lot of confusion about what's happening.
Fires in different Ventura County locations are taking place in Ventura, Simi Valley, Thousand Oaks, and Camarillo. Evacuation centers are set up in Borchard Community Center and Camarillo Community Center.
Today I'm supporting as the shelter manager for our Camarillo shelter. When there are large disasters such as this one, the Red Cross is able to really step in and provide support to those affected by offering a safe place for them to stay, our shelters, as well as just providing support, which could be food, clothing, a safe place to stay.
And I are dropping off some water and some granola bars and apples. We actually live not too far away from the community center here. We have friends and family that are in the affected area, so we wanted to be able to deliver some supplies.
These fires have forced people to evacuate their homes. Schools across the Ventura School District are closed. The naval base in Point Mugu is closed as well. The fires shut down the 101 freeway both north and southbound. Reporting from Camarillo, California, I am Winverly Rivera, and I am 1 with 25.
Thank you, Winverly. Meanwhile, the Hill Fire is about 5 miles from the site of a shooting Wednesday night at a bar in Thousand Oaks, California, in which 12 people were killed. Ivan Sanchez has more.
This is Ivan Sanchez reporting for EBC. I am here in Thousand Oaks, California, the site of back-to-back calamities affecting this community. On Wednesday night, there was a mass shooting at the Borderline Bar and Grill where 12 people lost their life. While the community mourned, 15 hours later on Thursday around 2 o'clock, 2 fires broke out in this area. To the west, called the Hill Fire, and to the east, called the Woolly Fire. I've actually never been this close to an actual fire, and as far as I am, maybe, I don't know, maybe at least 1,000 meters or more, I could feel the heat coming from the fire. Maybe you haven't heard of Thousand Oaks before. It is about 15 minutes north of Malibu, California. It is nearby Point Mugu and Oxnard. Today, there's been evacuation orders throughout this entire area because of these fires that are out of control. Last night, the winds were whipping up to 70 miles an hour, and that, combined with the dry brush conditions, has led to this uncontrollable fire in this area. So reporting for EBC, I am Ivan Sanchez, and I am 1 with 25.
Thank you, Ivan. Meanwhile, California's Governor Jerry Brown says that wildfires are the, quote, new abnormal for a state that is battling several devastating and deadly blazes. Take a look.
Like I said before, this is not the new normal, this is the new abnormal. And this new abnormal will continue, certainly in the next 10 to 15 to 20 years. And unfortunately, the best science is telling us that dryness, warmth, drought, all those things, they're going to intensify.
Over still 149,000 people evacuated throughout the state. Many of those evacuated, this is for all the fires, the 2 in Southern California and the fire in Northern California. Many have lost everything that they have. Currently, we have 25 people who have lost their lives so far, and that's 23 at the Camp Fire and 2 at the Woolsey Fire. And there are still a number of people who are unaccounted for. We're working closely with local authorities to be able to identify and work with them for accounting all those that are still unaccounted for. Look, this is not an easy situation. We know that. It's exhausting, and it will take time. You need to know that we're doing everything that we can to battle the fires and to take care of those that have been evacuated. We've seen communities come together time and time again, fire after fire and other disasters in California, and we'll get through this one as well.
Meanwhile, search teams scour the carnage of California's most destructive ever wildfire for victims on Sunday, as the statewide death toll rose above 24, with high winds hampering the effort to rescue property and save lives. And it became apparent that the town of Paradise, a town of 27,000 people north of Sacramento, had been devastated by the fire. Take a look.
Smith, and get his input. He's IC for law.
I'm adding the information into the GPS point.
To South Korea now, the autumn skies there have been filled with toxic haze being blown over from China. Kristen Jewel-Oyer reports.
On Tuesday, November 6, the Seoul government has given out an alert about ultrafine dust particles in the air. This is the first time the government sent an alert in this latter half of this year. The Seoul Metropolitan said that the density of fine dust particles has reached to 85 micrograms per cubic meter, higher than the minimum alert level of 75 micrograms per cubic meter. The government issues emergency alerts when the concentration level of ultrafine dust particles in the air surpasses 50 micrograms per cubic meter. The warning prompted majority of South Korean schools and institutions in Seoul to stay indoors, especially the young children. The public is advised to refrain from going outside as pollutants is alarmingly highly concentrated in the air. According to the National Institute of Environmental Research, the major cause of high level of ultrafine dust polluting South Korea's air is due to the polluted air coming from the northeastern China mixed with the airborne pollutants already present in the country. However, the amount of fine dust coming from overseas and within the country is always changing depending on weather conditions and timing, according to the Ministry of Environment. According to a ministry report revealed by Representative Hong Chul-ho of the Liberty Korea Party, about almost 12,000 people last year has passed away due to the various diseases caused by the presence of fine dust.
I am Kristen Jewel-Oyer, your EBC correspondent from South Korea, and I am 125.
Thunderstorms brought heavy rain, strong winds, and fresh flooding to the desert state of Qatar for the second time in less than a month, as bad weather battered the region, claiming lives. Now, some areas of Qatar received almost half a year's worth of rainfall in just a few hours as thunderstorms struck, according to the Qatar Meteorology Department. It said a northwestern part of the country received almost 31 millimeters, more than an inch of rainfall compared to the Emirates' annual rainfall of 77 millimeters. Bad weather has hit several countries in the region, including Jordan. Now, Jordanian rescuers on Monday found the body of a 5-year-old girl killed in flash floods that have left a total of 13 people dead in the kingdom, according to the civil defense. Flash floods also hit Kuwait on Saturday, killing a man and causing damage to roads, bridges, and homes. In other news, police investigating a major Australian strawberry needle contamination scare that sparked nationwide panic have identified a former farm supervisor as their main suspect. Pins and needles were found stuck in the fruit in September, leading supermarkets to pull boxes from shelves across Australia and New Zealand and forcing farmers to dump crops. Mi Trin, 50 years old, who worked at one of the strawberry farms where the tampered produce was grown, was arrested and charged with 7 counts of contaminating goods by Queensland State Police. She faced court on Monday and bail was denied after prosecutors said she could suffer retribution for her alleged actions. The court was told she was motivated by spite and revenge when she allegedly inserted the needles into the berries in early September. Records said Trin, an Australian citizen, was a supervisor at a farm, with Queensland's Courier Mail identifying her employer as the Berrylicious and Berry Obsession Farm, one of the growers at the heart of the scare. The court in Brisbane on Monday heard that Miss Trin's DNA had been found on strawberries in the state of Victoria. Eagle News International will be right back. Stay tuned.
Fun Run, November 18, 2018, at the Ciudad de Victoria Complex, Bulacan. Choose from race categories: 1.062 kilometer, 2.5 kilometers, 5 kilometers, and 9.55 kilometers. Registration is ongoing. For more details, log on to www.eaglenews.ph/EBC Funrun or call 784-7450, local 1162. You may also visit www.facebook.com/EBC Funrun. EBC Family Fun Run.
This event was made possible with our major sponsors: Regent, Life's Simple Pleasures, RY Graphics and Print, Guyamax, the natural 4-in-1 super antioxidant with guayabano mangosteen, turmeric, and vitamin C. With the participation of Isuzu, your responsible partner for life, together building people. Mr. Gary Escobar, Salampas by Hisamitsu Philippines, Skechers Performance, White Glow, Australia's #1 teeth whitening system. Beldia, your strategic procurement partner. Blue Pro Energy Plus Electrolytes. Enjoying your passion never stops. And in partnership with Maligaya Development Corporation and Philippine Red Cross.
Health is our most
Gaza Strip, killing 6 Palestinians and an Israeli soldier, according to officials, while potentially dashing hopes that a recent agreement would restore calm. As tensions rose following the clash, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office said he would cut short his trip to Paris, where he had been attending World War I commemorations, and return home. Fauzi Barhoum, a spokesman for Hamas, the Islamist movement that runs the blockaded Gaza Strip, denounced a cowardly Israeli attack. Palestinian security sources said the clash included Israeli airstrikes. Gaza's health ministry said 6 Palestinians were killed. Hamas won Palestinian elections in 2006 and reinforced its power in the Gaza Strip after ousting West Bank-based Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas's rival, Fatah faction, in clashes the following year. While Mr. Abbas's umbrella Palestine Liberation Organization has signed a peace deal accord or has signed peace deal accords with Israel, Hamas doesn't recognize Israel's right to exist and advocates the use of violence against it. Israel, along with Egypt, has maintained a blockade of Gaza since about 2006 in order, they say, to stop attacks by militants. In other news, at least 149 people have been killed in 24 hours of clashes in Yemen's vital port city of Hodeidah, according to medics and military sources, as international pressure mounted for a ceasefire. Government loyalists, backed by a Saudi-led coalition, are fighting to oust Houthi rebels from the Red Sea city, whose port is a lifeline to 40 million Yemenis who face mass starvation. A source in the pro-government coalition said the insurgents had pushed back a large-scale assault on the rebel-held port. The Hodeidah offensive has sparked international outcry, unprecedented in nearly 4 weeks or 4 years of conflict between Yemen's Houthis and are linked to Iran and the Saudi-backed government. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo on Sunday urged Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, a major ally of Washington, to engage in peace talks. British Foreign Secretary Jeremy Hunt will visit Saudi Arabia on Monday, where he will press King Salman and Prince Mohammed to support UN efforts to end the conflict. Both the U.S. and Britain are major suppliers of arms to Saudi Arabia. Aid groups fear for the safety of nearly 600,000 people living in Hodeidah, and for millions of others dependent on its port for what little food and humanitarian aid trickle into impoverished, blockaded Yemen. Meanwhile, the Saudi-led alliance has come under intense international pressure to end the conflict in Yemen, particularly following the killing of Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi. Meanwhile, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo told Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman on Sunday the U.S. will hold accountable all those involved in the killing of a dissident, the Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi, in a telephone call that also took in the conflict in Yemen. The killing of Jamal Khashoggi in Saudi Arabia's consulate in Istanbul and the war in Yemen, which has pushed the country to the brink of famine, are two of the main sources of strain in the decades-old alliance between Washington and Riyadh. Prince Mohammed is controversially linked to both. He has played a direct role in overseeing Saudi Arabia's Yemen intervention and has also been accused of orchestrating the October 2 murder of Khashoggi, who was a U.S. resident. Pompeo has previously said Khashoggi's killing violates the norms of international law and that the U.S. was reviewing possible sanctions on individuals identified as having been involved. But Pompeo and U.S. President Donald Trump have also both emphasized America's important commercial, strategic, and national security relationships with the petro state. And as the world marks the centennial of the First World War, Secretary General Antonio Guterres has called for a reformed, reinvigorated, and strengthened multilateral system to deal with today's global challenges.
As we mark the centennial of the First World War, we must draw its lessons
and buttress our practice of multilateralism for the tests and threats of today and tomorrow. And as 21st century challenges threaten to outpace 20th century institutions and mindsets, let us reaffirm the ideals of collective action while pursuing a new generation of approaches and architecture capable of responding. There is anxiety, uncertainty, and unpredictability across the world. Trust is on the decline within and among nations, and people are losing faith in political establishments, national and global. Key assumptions have been upended, key endeavors undermined, and key institutions undercut. We need new forms of cooperation with other international and regional organizations, a networked multilateralism. And we need closer links with civil society and other stakeholders, an inclusive multilateralism. The Security Council has a central role to play in showing the value of international cooperation.
The vast size of the financial support the United States gives the United Nations illustrates our seriousness with which we take this work and our commitment. But I'll be honest with you. There are times when the American people question their generous support to the United Nations. There are times where we are tempted to believe that multilateralism has been a bad deal for the United States, that we could be more effective advancing our principles and interests on our own. And there are times when that conclusion is correct.
Members to document S/2018/982 in accordance with
Europe should not spend higher defense budgets on U.S.-made weapons. French President Emmanuel Macron said in an interview that aired on Sunday after a defense row with President Trump. One of dozens of world leaders attending World War I commemorations in France this weekend. Trump tweeted after landing in Paris that Macron's call for a real European army was insulting. In an interview recorded on Saturday with CNN after talks with President Trump, President Macron said the two leaders had spoken about what his office has portrayed as a misunderstanding.
European countries. We had a very good discussion this morning, and he confirmed in front of the press that it was okay. I think.
Does that mean that his tweet was a mistake?
I don't know. I'm not the one to comment his tweet. I always prefer having direct discussion or answering questions than making my diplomacy through tweets.
Now, both leaders agree there should be better burden sharing within NATO, meaning Europe should be less reliant on U.S. spending for its defense, according to Macron. But Macron told CNN this. Let's listen in.
To be very direct with you, what I don't want to see is European countries increasing the budget in defense in order to buy Americans and other arms or materials coming from your industry. I think if we increase our budget is to have to build our autonomy and to become an actual sovereign power.
Now, President Trump on Friday called Macron's comments very insulting. The French presidency later sought to defuse the row, saying Macron's remarks had been misinterpreted. In his talks with the U.S. leader, Macron said he was merely arguing that Europe needed to take greater ownership of its own security, and President Trump described the pair as very good friends. Macron, however, said that while he and Trump had things in common, notably their rise to power as outside candidates, their outlook on the world was very different. He said, quote, "I'm not a nationalist, which for me is very different from being a patriot." Take a look.
Cette vision de la France comme nation généreuse, de la France comme projet, de la France porteuse de valeurs universelles, a été dans ces heures sombres exactement le contraire de l'égoïsme d'un peuple qui ne regarde que ses intérêts. Car le patriotisme est l'exact contraire du nationalisme. Le nationalisme en est la trahison.
Now, Queen Elizabeth II led Britain's National Service of Remembrance at the Cenotaph in London, 100 years since the end of World War I. President Frank-Walter Steinmeier, who takes part in the celebration, becomes the first German leader to do so. Take a look.
Really poignant being here. My great-grandfather served in the First World War along with his 3 brothers, so just been thinking about them a lot. Yeah, lots of people made sacrifices, thinking about them in particular today.
Meanwhile, Filipino World War II veterans World War veterans were honored in Sacramento, California. The report from Macy Membrere.
The first Congressional Gold Medal Award ceremony in honor of the Filipino veterans who fought in World War II was officially presented in the U.S. Capitol on October 25, 2017. Since then, many regional presentations have occurred.
That's why all of these ceremonies are happening. We're trying to, different regions are trying to make things happen and recognize their elders while they're still here.
Part of this historical fabric of American history, and if we don't celebrate them, we forget that history, and the history won't be told to future generations in our posterity. So broadly speaking, that's why this event was held today.
Today at the Secretary of State Auditorium in the capital of California, many people gathered to commemorate 60 Filipino veterans or their family representatives with the Congressional Gold Medal Award for their sacrifices and contributions made.
This event focused on our living veterans, and of course all of those who've passed away since, and also those of course who died during the war. This event is for them. Without their heroism, without their bravery and sacrifice, we would not be here enjoying our freedoms and our liberty. You have to remember that the Philippines was part of the United States at that time. So when they fought, they were not just defending their homeland, they were defending the United States of America, and they were of course hand in hand too with American soldiers as well.
It's very important to me to share this story to my children and grandchildren, because my dad fight for the United States of America side by side and to defend our country.
It was 1 year since we honored the veterans in Washington, D.C., and I was fortunate and blessed to be at that event in Capitol Hill. And I will tell you, with this event and that event in Washington, D.C., the same emotion took place here.
As a child growing up, you wonder if it's real, because there's nothing in the school books, there's nothing in the history books that validates it. It's only what you hear from your grandfathers, your parents, your family. So the importance of this to the Filipino community and to the families is finally, seeing the people that you respect, that you love, just be recognized. So it's gratifying, it's emotional, and it just happened too late, but you saw, during the presentation, there wasn't a dry eye in the house.
Today was filled with emotion as we remembered the Filipino veterans who served in World War II. From the Secretary of State in Sacramento, California, I'm Macy Membrere, 1 with 25.
Thank you, Macy. Meanwhile, Iglesia Ni Cristo members in the island territory of American Samoa focused their efforts on helping children in need during the INC's Worldwide Aid for Humanity. For more, here's EBC American Samoa correspondent Felchi Ogayon. Felchi?
1 year since the first Aid for Humanity project in American Samoa was launched, members of the Church of Christ in this part of the world continue their acts of generosity, this time intended for the children. A free clothing drive was held at the INC's place of worship in Pango. Visitors young and old took advantage of the opportunity to receive nice clothes that they needed for school, work, or other occasions. Brother Edgar Caba, a minister of the gospel assigned in American Samoa, took the time to teach the young visitors the importance of being responsible for their actions as well as respecting their elders.
The Church of Christ, or Iglesia Ni Cristo, even in this small island of American Samoa, we try to reach out to the people. That is why we have the so-called Lingap sa Mamamayan, or Aid for Humanity, so that we will be able to help the people who are in need, especially those who also suffer calamities.
Visitors were also treated with some refreshments to counter the heat and humidity as the summer season approaches in this time of year in the South Pacific.
Samoa is just one part of the global church's effort to extend aid to the poor and those affected by recent calamities in various parts of the world. Reporting from Pango in American Samoa, this is Felcy Oghayan, and I am 1 with 25.
And we'll take another short break. Eagle News International will be right back. Stay tuned.
Join the EBC Family Fun Run, November 18, 2018, at the Ciudad de Victoria Complex, Bulacan. Choose from race categories: 1.062 kilometer, 2.5 kilometers, 5 kilometers, and 9.55 kilometers. Registration is ongoing. For more details, log on to www.eaglenews.ph/EBC Fun Run or call 784-7450, local 1162. You may also visit www.facebook.com/EBC Fun Run. EBC Family Fun Run.
This event was made possible with our sponsors: Guiamax, the natural 4-in-1 super antioxidant with guayabano mangosteen, turmeric, and vitamin C. Skechers Performance, White Glow, Australia's #1 teeth whitening system. Beldia, your strategic procurement partner. Blue Pro Energy Plus Electrolytes. Enjoying your passion never stops. And in partnership with Maligaya Development Corporation and Philippine Red Cross.
Health is our most important asset, and it should always be a constant effort to seek ways to take care of it. That includes professional medical help from the best available. The Manila-Beijing Medical Associated Incorporated is known as one of the most specialized centers in medical services, backed by several
ng TV shows. Para ugaliin ng pamilya ang responsableng panonood. Teamwork tayo, parents!
Rated G, good for all. Oops, rated PG. Dapat may mga magulang para sagutin ang mga tanong ng kabataan.
Grabe, rated SPG, maselan!
Higpitan ang paggabay.
Pag rated MTRCB, rated responsable.
Health is our most important asset, and it should always be a constant effort to seek ways to take care of it. That includes professional medical help from the best available. The Manila-Beijing Medical Associated Incorporated is known as one of the most specialized centers in medical services, backed by several experienced physicians in Chinese medicine. At an accuracy rate of 98%, countless patients who visited Manila-Beijing Medical Associated Incorporated have already been treated and cured.
Marami ko ospital na napuntahan, pero wala ring nangyayari. Somebody introduced me.
Welcome back. Saudi Arabia's energy minister calls for a global output cut of 1 million barrels per day to rebalance the market, as Riyadh unveiled plans to cut output by 500,000 BPD next month during Abu Dhabi's International Petroleum Exhibition and Conference. Take a listen.
The technical analysis we saw yesterday from the OPEC Secretariat and from our joint technical committee looking at IEA and EIA data tells us that there will need to be a reduction of supply from October levels approaching 1 million barrels.
Now, Brent crude dropped below $70 a barrel on Friday for the first time since April, but it was trading above $71 a barrel on Monday. West Texas Intermediate crude also dropped to a 9-month low below $60 a barrel. It was trading above $61 on Monday. Now, Khalid Al-Falih's comments followed a meeting in Abu Dhabi at the weekend, where major producers started laying the groundwork to cut supply in 2019, reversing an almost year-long expansion. The group, including Russia and Saudi Arabia, warned that crude supply would outstrip demand next year.
Your Excellency, does it require 2019?
On a lighter note, domestic helpers in Hong Kong held a marginalized position in society and can find it, or hold a marginalized position in society and can find it difficult to access public facilities. But some are making a big splash on Sundays thanks to free swimming lessons. Take a look.
I cannot float. That's the problem. And I have fear in the water. I really can't float at all.
That some of these women might want to have the opportunity to learn. Most of them come from the Philippines or Indonesia. They come from archipelagos, and yet they don't know how to swim.
Domestic helpers, we want more
other things to do because we always do same thing.
Singapore's Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong said, having benefited from ASEAN integration and open and connected economies, businesses should also be prepared to adapt to and accept more competition in their home markets. Now, he was speaking at the opening ceremony of the two-day ASEAN Business and Investment Summit. He extolled the benefits of economic openness, which reduces barriers and costs for businesses. He also said that while ASEAN has great potential, fully realizing it depends on whether members choose to become more integrated in a world where multilateralism is fraying under political pressures. Take a look.
Businesses have to do their part too. Our companies hope to invest more in one another's countries and do business across all ASEAN markets. And the more integrated and open our markets are, the more conducive our rules and business environments to foreign investment, the larger the pie will grow and the more we will all benefit. But businesses are not always supportive when it comes to opening up our own domestic markets to foreign competition. They may lobby governments to impose regulations or keep industries closed to protect themselves. But having benefited from ASEAN integration and open and connected economies, our businesses should be prepared to adapt and to accept more competition in their home markets in exchange for more access to markets in other ASEAN countries. The ASEAN BAC has played a key leadership role to influence this. It's working to improve physical and digital interconnectivity in ASEAN. For example, recently it launched Smart Growth Connect, which uses technology to improve supply chains and logistics in ASEAN countries. And later today, my fellow ASEAN leaders and I will discuss with ASEAN BAC how regional economic integration efforts can be effective and relevant to business needs. ASEAN has great potential, but fully realizing it depends on whether we choose to become more integrated and work resolutely towards this goal in a world where multilateralism is fraying under political pressures. The AEC 2025 blueprint will help guide ASEAN to deepen economic integration, open up new growth frontiers, and create fresh business opportunities. We must play our respective parts as government and business leaders to pursue this vision. Only then can ASEAN continue to be a dynamic region of growth, and only then can we secure a prosperous future for all.
Meanwhile, finance ministers of the 10-member Association of Southeast Asian Nations on Monday signed the bloc's first agreement to facilitate e-commerce transactions in the region. ASEAN, the third largest trading bloc in the world, is holding meetings on Monday and Tuesday prior to its official summit scheduled for Wednesday and Thursday in Singapore. The newly signed agreement will foster speed and cooperation between businesses and governments, generating more efficient transactions, according to Singaporean Trade and Industry Minister Chan Chun Sing. The U.S.-China trade war is expected to be a major topic on the ASEAN summit agenda, with participation of member countries Malaysia, Indonesia, Brunei, Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, Singapore, Thailand, and the Philippines. The summit will also have the presence of the U.S., China, Russia, Japan, and South Korea. U.S. President Donald Trump will be represented by Vice President Mike Pence, who will also participate in the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation, or APEC, Forum in Papua New Guinea later.
Your Excellencies,
Meanwhile, President Duterte and other leaders of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations are scheduled to meet their dialogue partners in this 33rd ASEAN Summit and related summits in Singapore from November 13 to the 15th. Presidential spokesperson Salvador Panelo said this will be among the president's scheduled activities during the ASEAN Summit. Panelo also said the summits in Singapore will give President Duterte the chance to witness the progress of ASEAN's relations with its dialogue partners to foster deeper cooperation on priority areas, including peace, security, economy, and overall well-being of Filipinos. He said President Duterte will first take part in the opening ceremony for the second and last summit of ASEAN for this year, after which they will witness a presentation by the ASEAN Business Advisory Council. He said there will also be a working dinner for the ASEAN leaders to be hosted by Singaporean Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong and an ASEAN Summit plenary session. Meanwhile, President Duterte is also scheduled to attend the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation or APEC Economic Leaders Summit in Port Moresby on November 17 and the 18th. Foreign Affairs Undersecretary Ernesto Abella said empowering micro, small, and medium enterprises or MISMIS and ensuring food security will be part of the President's priority agenda. Now, within APEC, Abella said the government was also preparing Filipinos to meet challenges and opportunities of a digital world. He noted that the digital world, or artificial intelligence, blockchains, and the internet were redefining businesses, services, and education. Take a listen.
The President joins other leaders in affirming commitment to an international rules-based regime, support of the multilateral trading system embodied by organizations like the World Trade Organization. The President conveys his support for mechanisms that will enable our MSMEs, or MISMIS as they call it, to take advantage of digital and online platforms to benefit their enterprises and to bring their products and services overseas. To this end, the APEC adopted the Boracay Action Agenda in working towards enabling MSMEs in the region to link internationally. He joins other leaders also in support of formulating a new and inclusive APEC vision beyond the year 2020. He calls attention to our efforts at ensuring food security for our people and advancing economic opportunities for women. Within APEC, the government is preparing Filipinos to meet the challenges and opportunities of a digital world where artificial intelligence, blockchains, big data, and the Internet of Things are redefining the way we do business, deliver services, and education of the young, especially orienting them now towards science.
Meanwhile, Papua New Guinea has been preparing and has deployed a multinational force of warships, fighter jets, and even elite counterterrorism troops to protect world leaders attending the major summit in its capital this week. Now, about 4,000 military personnel, around half of them foreign, will work with hundreds of police to patrol Port Moresby for the APEC Forum from Saturday, which will attract representatives from 21 nations. Our EBC correspondent Echo Hortaleza reports from Papua New Guinea.
This building behind me is where the Asia-Pacific Economic Corporation, or APEC 2018, will be held at. This is the APEC House. The APEC leaders from different countries will come to Papua New Guinea to formulate a multi-year plan. The APEC Summit is the largest event that will be done in Papua New Guinea.
The global focus is now on Papua New Guinea as it will host this year's Asia-Pacific Economic Corporation, or the so-called APEC, on November 15 to 17, 2018 under the theme Inclusion in the Age of Disruption, Charting a Common Future. The APEC leaders, global CEOs, and thought leaders will come to Port Moresby, the capital city of Papua New Guinea. Preparations are well underway to welcome the presidents and prime ministers. As of now, some of the advanced party delegates are already here to have the chance to see what this country have in store that can be showcased in the world. This country will experience an influx of foreign investments and will be a strong source of employment opportunities, not just for the nationals of PNG, but for us too, the Filipinos.
We need investment. We need partnerships. We need capital to develop our country. And so APEC is going to present a wonderful opportunity, marketing opportunity for Papua New Guinea, because there's so many opportunities with the wealth that we have and the wonderful people that we have and the beautiful culture that we have, where we're placed geographically as well with our partners. This country has got all the makings of a huge success story, and it will be.
It's a major undertaking, but it's very, very important when it comes to promoting the country, economically wise, putting it on the map for tourism, business, many different aspects. I mean, the whole world will be watching. Having these world leaders here is creating history for our country and the region, not forgetting the Pacific. We've never had leaders like this before ever come to this area.
Reporting from Port Moresby, Papua New Guinea, this is Echo Hortaleza Quinola, and I am 1 with 25.
All right, and that's it for tonight's broadcast. For everyone here on Eagle News International, I'm Alma Angeles, always 1 with 25. Good night.